Hello heroes, it's Warwick here from Account Manager Tips, continuing my quest to help busy account managers get results. Now today I'm super excited to share my conversation with Calin Muresan, existing business manager at Netguru. Calin joined the team when there were only 2 account managers, and today, only 2 years later, there are now 20. Now look, if there is one thing I know, it's when you're a small business, your priority is survival. Organizational design and formal systems, well, that can wait. Which means as an account manager, you've really got to rely on your instincts and maybe a little prayer. But what happens when things take off? I mean, you cannot run an account management team like that, and you certainly cannot run a business like that. If you're going to scale, sooner or later, you're going to have to think about how you recruit and retain talent, and you need to put those systems in place for information, planning, and control to deliver a consistent experience for your clients. So look, welcome to part 2, where Calin and I continue the conversation about account management as a revenue growth engine for Netguru, why your client sales teams are your best teachers, recommended resources, and a whole lot more. So enjoy. Problems, like in terms of any major challenges, anything that sticks out at you as what was an obstacle getting you to where you are today?
I think to this day, I still think this account plan mindset was the biggest obstacle. Because once this started happening, this is a click, like people started thinking long term and seeing the benefit of involving other elements of the organization. Now things are starting to become easier. I mean, there's still a lot of obstacles. There are obstacles. For example, we introduced just 2 quarters ago doing quarterly business reviews with our clients. So it might sound silly, that we introduced it so late, but it is still an obstacle. We're still learning how to do this part. Yeah. But to some extent, we see all this now as part of the account plan, or the account, you could call it account-based sales. It's pretty much the same thing in my mind here. But the biggest obstacle was to switch from a mindset where the account manager was thinking, okay, I'm talking to 3 stakeholders. I have this project. They might come and give me more, to a mindset where, okay, so I'm going to set myself very ambitious goal. Like I'm going to talk to, let's take an enterprise, healthcare enterprise. I'm going to talk to 3 C-levels. And their first reaction always was, I'm not going to talk to the C-level. I said, it's not you. It's Netguru who needs to talk to 3. It's you who needs to facilitate it. Yeah. And that's, I think, when they started thinking, okay, and this is still a challenge for me sometimes for account managers to think, I'm the owner of the account. And actually it's my duty and my right to go and ask the organization to do things for me. And by the organization, I mean Netguru here. And this is the biggest obstacle, because people sometimes are afraid. They are scared of roles. They feel, as you mentioned, leadership. And as role starts to be, they get scared of the C in front of the CEO, or the C in front of the CTO. And they are new in the organization, they don't know these people. Like, I know them already, and it's like, can I go to the CEO and ask him? I'm like, yeah, of course. He expects you to, Yeah. And this is a hard mindset, and it's still a big blocker sometimes. It's still a big blocker because you see people, they would like to experiment, but then they feel afraid to ask for the help from the organization. So this was honestly the biggest blocker for me, to change the mindset. Now I would say changed, and this account plan was essential for it, but it's still a lot of work to be done in this direction.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of account managers think of an account plan as something they own end to end, start to finish on their own. It isn't that at all. It's so many different moving parts, and your role is to coordinate them and facilitate them. And whether that means engaging your CEO to be introduced to your client CEO, or whether that means you've got to get your tech team to do something, but that doesn't mean you have to physically go and do everything. So I think you're right, that people do get a bit overwhelmed, and I think that's one of the fears of an account plan. Or also sometimes I think you only need a couple of things on an account plan. Some people want to make it like a shopping list. They think the bigger the better, but actually, as long as you're better off to have a few solid things that make an impact to you and to your client, and you can get them done, and that your client's going to spend some time on them, versus a whole.
So you are 100% right here. So when I introduced the objective and key results, I said, okay, 1 objective, ambitious, and then 3 key results. For a whole year, that was the reaction. For the whole year, I was like, yes, for the whole year, 3 key results. Yeah. Okay, but what if I achieve them by January? Then they're not ambitious, and I'll challenge you. But if you achieve them by mid-quarter, that's great. That means you're on track. But this links to other initiatives that we have in Netguru. So in projects, we do business values, and we try to understand, and this is a lot delivery team is focused, what's the business value that the project delivers. But for the account manager, what I need is literally 5 sentences. What's your objective and key results? And then we can start digging. How are you going to achieve it? what do you need for this? But like the account plan overall, it's 5 sentences. That's what it came today to. And everything else, it's automated. All this index I told you and everything, this is done by our CRM automatically. I can see it live every day. It uses the data that we have already in the CRM. So it's nothing manual work.
Yeah, which is brilliant. You don't need admin for this stuff.
Yeah.
You don't, as long as you've got the high level kind of objectives, you're good to go. What about, you mentioned a bit earlier about just, when you first started with sort of account planning, that it wasn't necessarily lined up with KPIs, and potentially other departments' KPIs might not fit into yours. Did you have was that a big challenge, or were you able to line those up pretty easily?
So I remember I was really struggling. I was like, so I had a few quarters of continuously iterating the account plan. I ended up to this point when I said, okay, now I want to start measuring it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how, and I was really stuck. And I knew kind of the logic, and then someone introduced me to the book about OKRs. I read it, and they said, read this and you'll find the solution. And that's how I came with the OKRs idea. Everything else, then I realized, okay, well, they already have KPIs that I measure them. So today, an account manager performance, and actually their bonus is related in a mix of sales target and quality KPIs. So I decided, okay, why not take those quality KPIs, since I consider them so valuable that, we pay bonuses, and put the same things in the account plan on top of the OKRs. And that's what we did. So it was challenging, but the moment I got it right, it looked so, like, one of those things was like so obvious. I was like, how could I miss this? For 2 quarters in a row, trying to come with complicated ways of measuring and thinking and feedback and loops and so on, when all the data is there. In terms of aligning with other organizations, it actually was easy, because this is something, especially one organization with the growth department. So by growth here, I mean everything that you think marketing, branding falls under our growth. They have an interest in talking publicly about our clients anyway. So when I managed to explain to our account managers that it's also in our interest that they talk about this, it was cool. And when we did account plan days and we started inviting growth, and they came and started learning more about the accounts, they got excited and they said, we have these goals, and actually now you have these goals. So now we started aligning. So what happened, for example, Netguru does these events from time to time, Disruption Forum. In one of our very big accounts, I put one of the objectives and key results. I challenged the account manager in January to put public presence together with his client. This is a client which has very strong NDA with us. So the account manager said, no, it's possible. They will never give us references. And I said, I didn't ask references. I asked public presence.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, them being present at an event, their logo next to us, doesn't mean we work together, because we do a lot of events, but it's still something.
Yeah.
And we achieved it. And the funny thing is but that was a blocker, because they thought immediately case study. Now we are happy. And trust me, our growth team is also happy, because this is a very big name.
Yeah.
We still are not allowed to talk about the collaboration, but that doesn't mean our names are now together in few events, and that means a lot, because the industry is smart. And when you see names together, you make associations, and you know how these things work.
Yeah.
So that's how it works. It's a subtle way sometimes to achieve the things that you want. And then that's what I mean by account plan. A lot of those objectives and key results in our case are the soft things, not going through the door, going through that hole through the window, like getting to your objective, but not through the straightforward pipeline way that people were thinking in the past. So it's something to help your pipeline. Pipeline is also nothing to be ignored, but this is something to actually enhance your pipeline and increases your opportunity, that in the future you'll get more opportunities. And as you do more and more of these things in years, the noise and the name of Netguru is more and more known and present in the client. And the likelihood of you getting more and more things naturally, it's growing in time.
Yeah.
At least that's what I hope.
Well, no, and what it does is it compiles the evidence. It demonstrates the value you bring through your account management team, and how different they are at the end of the year than they were at the beginning, like to the client. Without account planning, there's no documentation. There's nothing to share to let your client know, or to guide the account manager through that year to deliver a result. And that's what I found with account planning myself, is that just having an account plan and being able to discuss it with my client, that alone just gives me so much more credibility, so much more access, engages them so differently. And then at the end of the year, when we've achieved these things, they're happy about them. How do you, I presume, is it all internal? Is it external? Do you share it all with your client? Like, what's the balance? Some people don't don't have account plans that they share with clients. I'm a big believer in, full disclosure pretty much with clients and joint planning where you can. What's your approach?
So my dream is that we will share them with clients. Today, I would lie if I would say we do so. I would say probably 80% of them are internal.
Mm-hmm.
And this was my mission of creating the mindset initially internally, how people think before we go to the client. So we look experts of what, at least we look like we know what we're doing. That's where the QBR comes in effect now. By starting to do QBRs, we started openly telling our clients also, besides revenue, where we would like to expand. And those QBRs, especially the ones that we did in a very right way, we build them together with the clients. Like this is the other like big change that we're doing at the moment. Is if you do QBR and you prepare it yourself and you're going to do a presentation, it's not a QBR or it's not a business review. Or it's the best QBRs that we did so far were the ones where literally the presentation was built by our account manager together with that contact person. Slides were written together. So when the presentation came together and the executive teams were in the same room, we both, especially the account manager and the person of contact, they knew exactly what's there and they aligned the story in a way that they got what they want and we got what we want. And that's, I think, the element that will bring, probably, I hope that if we talk again in 2 years about this topic, I would like to say it's not 80% of the company, it's 20%, which is internal, the part that we want to keep only for us. And I think in time, this is the part that will transit. But today, we're not there. With this part, we're not there.
I think that's something for others to realize as well, is that, you can do it different ways. It can be a journey. And sometimes when you're trying to finesse it and embed it and figure it out, you don't want to go to your clients saying, here's our account planning process. And then 3 weeks later, oh, actually, we're doing it differently. Oh, actually, now we're going to do it. Once you're confident and you're in a good place with the account planning concept and it's embedded, then you can evolve it to something that's maybe more client facing, or talk about how you can attach some of the conversations to your QBRs. But ultimately, for me, I think it's so important that you end up having a lot of it, disclosed to clients, because when you're doing it on your own and it's internal, it still puts you at the center of the conversation. You know what I mean? Like, even though you're talking about the client, if you're not involving the client in the conversation, it's all secondhand. It's all stuff you've been told by them or you've figured out or that you want, versus really knowing what your client wants, being able to translate that back into your account plan and then sharing it with them so that they know you're doing something about what you've talked about, and that they agree with the direction you're headed.
And also, like, you can see if the interests are in the same point. So, like, I know, even talking about this thing like public appearance and so on, you can very openly explain to the client, okay, we have strong NDA, but this is the way you can help us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being more open about it instead of, I agree with you. The full transparency is something, but as you mentioned, it's first we needed to look confident when we go there, and since we were changing like now it's defined. For the last 2-3 quarters, we didn't change the process. We are adding small tweaks. So now I feel confident, when people talk at QBRs and I see they show their goals. I know some account managers shared. I know some shared, but this is, I let it down to them and how confident each account manager feels with their client and their relationships. So.
And not all account plans are going to be works of art. They're not all going to be something that you need to share, but it's great that you're kind of moving in that direction. We'd like to see it there. What's maybe something that you didn't realize about account management, or that you think a lot of people misunderstand or don't get about account management? A common misconception.
So I think it's this part that I mentioned at the beginning. When I do interviews, especially, I hear this a lot. It's in no way less sales than sales. This is probably the biggest misconception I had as well when I ended up with this. It's account management, it's not the sales part. That's the reason I said I lied to myself. Now I lied to this part. And then I realized actually I'm doing sales. Stop lying to yourself. But I read this, sometimes even I see it in comments, I see it over the internet. I hear people, I want to choose account management. I don't like sales. I like building relationship. I'm like, okay, I mean, it's fair. I understand this part, but you shouldn't choose account management if you don't like sales. Like, I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions. It's still sales. Ultimately, my clients know me, and like, I always used to say, look, ultimately, like, we all know why we're here. And like, this is the best times when you have very open, like, I'm here to grow the business of my client or my employee. and you are here to benefit. My role is to align these things.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's about, it's sales. We're part of sales department, at least at Netguru and in a lot of other organizations. I report to the head of sales. I have a quota attached to myself, to each account manager. And this is probably the biggest misconception I see, and I had when I started in account management. The other probably part of it is the proactiveness part. People also think, oh, it's farming. And I always say it's not farming, especially at how we built it at Netguru. It's hunting in your own farm. Yes, I'm not asking you to go for new clients, but I'm giving you this big land and I'm telling you, go and hunt. I gave you just the first, first plot, and I said, but everything else, it's yours. Now just go and bring the resources. I don't really know how. You figure it out with the account plan and so on, but there's still a lot of hunting left. There's still a lot of outreaching. This is something that people don't, I'm asking them, have you reached to these new people? Oh, but that's out. How do you expect to meet new stakeholders if you don't do outreach? Yeah. You might still have to sometimes cold call where an account manager. You might still have to do cold emailing. So this is, I think, one misconception I see about account management, a very big one. So
I agree with you completely. I think it's one of the biggest from both, like from account managers themselves, like you say, as well as from people that are not account managers. And I love that expression, hunting in your own farm, because that's exactly what it is. And you have to sell. You've got to renew a client on existing projects. You've got to grow projects, get new business, new territories. You've got to improve margins. Like you say, meet new people. And there's lots of elements that are the same. I think, you start from, I guess somebody explained it to me once. They said, a salesperson starts at zero. Like they don't know the person. They don't have a relationship. There's literally no pre-existing partnership, nothing on which they've got a foundation to stand to get to a comfortable point where they can sell. Account managers start probably at a 50 or a 60 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like they've kind of got relationships. You've got some of the business, you've got sort of a gateway to some of the stakeholders, but it's not a done deal, you know what I mean? And I also love the idea that you were just talking about. I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm just sort of repeating what you were saying just to get my thoughts out. But I like the idea that, about being transparent with your client, that we're all here to sell and grow our business. And like, that doesn't mean I'm going to sell you something that's crap. That doesn't mean I'm going to sell ice to Eskimos just because I need to make some money. I still have a great product and a great solution, and I know that it's the right one for you. But which is what I'm saying about account plans. I would put on my account plans, I need to get your business in Germany, or I need to, and it's not. Some people would be like, oh, we don't want them to know that we're sort of looking for that commercial partnership, but that's something we're just going to. I'm like, well, why can't we just say it out loud? Why do we have to keep it a secret? I want more of your business. I want to be a single supplier. I don't want to be, I want whatever. And let's figure out together how I can prove to you that we're the right partner.
I think it's a problem because it comes to human nature. It sounds bad when you say I want something. It sounds selfish, ultimately. You also don't want to be rejected, but we all work in sales, so rejection it's our thing.
Yeah.
But it comes down to that, and I think I personally, as an account manager, I had the biggest satisfaction when I was very open to the client. As you mentioned, look, I want to get in that site. Can you help me? And they sometimes sit down with you, they draw the organigram, and you sit down and think to yourself. I remember sitting in one meeting and thinking, bloody hell, for like 2 months I've been trying to do my digging, and it was just literally asking this person, hey, can you draw it for me? And they said, sure. Here's this person. If you want to talk to this person, be careful. That's how they negotiate. And I was like, nothing to lose for them, nothing to lose for me. I mean, and it's so being open about your intentions and acknowledging the fact that you are a salesperson, it's really essential at the end of the day. And yes, as you said, that's an account manager. You also, once you sell, you have to be there for the result. So, don't sell ice to the Eskimos, but, sell. I mean, it's absolutely okay. Yeah. That's what you're here to do.
And the thing is, if you are transparent with your point of contact, they may help you. There's less, if they don't, at least they may give you permission to pursue it, or they might point you in the right direction. There's not some of the, what can happen is that you end up with backlash. Like if you haven't been really transparent about it, and then they find out you've been talking to somebody else or trying to get a deal done, then they get really, uncomfortable about it. But people used to be like going on LinkedIn trying to like make connections and draw diagrams of who's who and all that. And I was like, why don't you just ask them for their org chart? And they're like, what? I can't do that. Why not?
I remember when I was
asked my clients. Like, why do you want it?
when my first leader at Netguru told me, I said, like, I can't figure it out. I said, can you not just ask them? I was like, can I ask people for org charts? And he was like, try it. And I was like, no, it's not going to work. This is bullshit.
No.
Like, who am I to go and ask them, an enterprise? Absolutely no problem. It was like as I told you, it was mind blowing. I was sitting in that meeting. The person was drawing the org chart for me. And then, of course, once they were drawing, it was easy for me to ask, okay, can you help me understand this?
Yeah.
Who's that? What department is this? Who reports to whom? It's confusing for me. I had this similar case recently. Someone, one of the account managers we works on the account that used to be mine, comes to me and asks me, hey, I met this new person. The title doesn't match what the other person said. Do you know why? And I was like, no. But did you ask them? They were like, no. I'm like, just ask them. Like, why are they, their title is, I don't know, operational, whatever. And people refer to them as something else. Like, what does it mean? Because, organigrams are so different from organization to organization. Yeah. Like, so, but it's hard. Sometimes it's hard because we don't want to get rejection. Like, honestly, this is probably the human nature. We don't want to hear the no. We don't want to hear like, I don't know, I don't have time for this. You don't want to feel you bothered someone. This is a huge challenge. So.
Thinking about all the things that you've talked about, Calin, and all the things that you've shared around how you've grown the team, how you've recruited the team, the things that you've implemented, the way that you've got such collaboration in the team and visibility amongst your organization. You obviously got a vision of where you want to head with the team, or you've got some concepts about what good looks like for your business with account management and for your clients. So what is your vision, or how do you communicate that or kind of keep that front of mind for you and for your team?
So I remember when I became team leader, I kind of also myself, I was temporary team leader. They were supposed to recruit someone. That's how I became team leader. Yeah. Like, Calin will take care of it till we recruit someone. Yeah. And then first question asked, can it stay permanent? Second question I got back was like, can you make it? And I said, I don't know. But I came back 2 months later and I sat down with our COO and head of sales. And I showed them I still have the mind map at home. I draw a mind map, how I imagine the account manager. And this was when we were 4 people. Yeah. So then was about, moving into proactivity and so on. But then last year, we were already 3 teams. And I decided to pitch for the position of manager. We didn't have this position. So I wanted to unify again the vision and report directly to the head of sales. So I sat down and actually built my vision. And it came back to the same thing I believed since the moment I joined Netguru, and I realized in what opportunities. My ambition is to create a new standard in account management. My vision is this, like to end up with Netguru in an organizational way that the account management becomes something that other organizations look up through. Yeah. This is one thing, but the other thing is it's actually the growth engine of Netguru. Again, as I said, we have an amazing new business. They close new accounts, but as the organization grows, we're doing now close to $50 million sales per year. It's impossible to add a new business that in a year. This comes from recurring business only. And since we keep doubling in revenue every year, this won't happen unless we know how to grow the accounts effectively. Yeah. And by that, I mean providing value to them to buy more, not to just sell them. And so that doesn't come only to my team, it comes through all elements of the organization. But what I really like here and what I really believe I believe that Netguru becomes more and more customer centric, because that's the only way to grow in a bigger organization, regardless in what area you are. But that starts from our team, because my team is the one that, in theory, should be the one who comes and says, these are the trends in the market, because I talk to the clients. This is the needs that I see in the market. So this is the new things that we should do in our product line. Yeah. So also, this is the way to be customer centric, and this is how we should adjust our services. This is how we should adjust our approach, processes. Of course, a lot of things come from other organizations, but I truly believe that it's our duty, actually, as account management department in this organization, to drive this. And this is a vision I was shared from one of the co-founders when I joined, and I just bought into it immediately. And it stick to me. And this is like what I tell all the time. It's our duty to drive the organization. And sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes you have to fight internally for things. Especially, we had few instances in the last 2-3 years when we created new services through account management. We came with ideas. It took so much to sell them internally, and it's fine. I always tell the account manager, it's fine. But like then you sold it, you opened the door, and the organization discovered a new thing, a new way of selling services, a new way of providing value to the client. And for the next account managers, it will be easy. So it's that one who opens the door and has to drive the change. But ultimately, I believe that's what it comes down to. So on one side is creating a benchmark, but that's the benchmark. The benchmark is that the sales department usually drives the change in the organization through good and bad, through frustration, through other departments, through selling things that are unachievable.
Yeah.
But that's the way you put the organization forward.
Yeah. That's like a music to my ears. I think account management is so underappreciated for the contribution that they can make to business growth. And when you talk about, 70% or something like that of revenue comes from existing clients, the potential, if you have the right team in place, the right engagement, the right support from the business, the right people leading the team, and the account managers themselves accepting responsibility for their role in doing that, achieving that, you can be unstoppable. And I think what a wonderful vision to be able to, elevate your team in terms of not just your business, but just as an industry benchmark of like what good account management looks like in your space, and that they are the ones that are the drivers of growth. And one of the things I used to do a lot was just talk to my clients' account managers, because that's an easy way.
I love that. I love to talk to their sales team.
Because that's like completely safe space. You're in your different businesses usually, and it's just interesting to get insights into how they do things.
And there's another trick there, and I'll give this trick because I love it. When you talk to the sales team of the other like with your clients, first you learn about different industries, different ways of doing KPIs and so on, which is amazing. It's a safe space because a lot of times, even if they don't know you don't really, in our industry, I don't work with the sales departments, but if they know I'm a supplier, it's different. But I sell, that means that's what drives my company forward. So if I talk to someone from their sales and I learn what they're selling and what it's valuable for them and for their clients, well, I can actually position my services better later.
Yes.
It's one of the best sources of information, talking to the sales of your client, because ultimately those are the people who sell the services that you probably are building, not the tech team that you're building for or the marketing team. Those are the people that actually ultimately have to fill their bottom line, their cash flow and so on. So it's a two-way thing. So as an account manager, I encourage people to do that. But second, it's also you learn so much. We had one or two of our clients who came and actually asked them if they can do kind of share knowledge for our account managers. Just tell us like what are their challenges, how they sell in their industry, in their countries. We work a lot with countries outside Poland. So yeah, I love that. I agree that it's a gold mine that gets unexplored because why should I talk to sales? It's not like I'm going to sell them something. Basically, if I understand who's your perfect client or who your perfect partner, that means I really understand your business. And this is a valuable thing. Like that's what you want as an account manager, to be seen as the person who understands them more than anything.
Any resources, books, anything you want to recommend that's helped you as you've kind of built this team? Has there been anything that stands out?
So with books, I'm a big believer in reading. So I actually read a lot and I try to read in all subjects. But there's one book which I keep recommending to the account managers is The Trusted Advisor. It was one of those books I was reading. I was like, yes, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm also into podcasts. So one podcast which I really enjoy and I love, and it's a sales podcast, is a sales evangelist. I don't know if you know Donald C. Kelly from Florida. He's one of the top. So I've been listening Donald since 5 years. Since my first sales job, I was Google. And I've been talking with him a few times. Like I actually been introducing a few people to him as well. So he's a lovely guy. Like, Donald is top guy. But the way he organized his podcast, and the thing is, there's not that many podcasts, or I didn't find any specifically at account management, but it's sales. And he covers so many areas, and I love it. Like sometimes about leadership, sometimes about outreach, different industries, and so on. So for me, this is the one that I keep going back to. So like Donald knows I'm his biggest fan in Europe.
And any final parting advice for anybody that might be going on this type of journey that's finding themselves with a growing team and a growing business?
So I was trying to think, because what's the thing that actually keeps me pushing forward? And actually, what's the thing that I see in account managers keeping forward? So regardless if you go in leadership, like the path I chose in the last few years now, or the path of account manager, I think the thing that I can advise everyone is just keep exploring, like literally, like never give up, like you bang your head on the wall, just start questioning, is it the right wall? And just explore the ways around. And this is the same way I did account management, and the same way I try to do leadership. I always try to explore to better myself. I would never reach to the, I mean, of course I'm satisfied where I am, but that doesn't mean you should stop exploring, you know? You should stop exploring, go better ways, more efficient ways, more valuable ways. So this is like explore. This really stays for me. Like explore the way you know your client, explore new ways of selling your services, explore new ways of, I don't know, organizing your time, explore new ways of getting connected to your clients. Always explore. And this is, at some point you'll hit your style. This is like what I did, and each account manager does that, each person have their niche, but like this is the only way. And if you're afraid of failure and so on, just just go for it.
All right, Calin, well, look, thank you so much for your time. I know we've talked a lot, but I think there's been so much valuable advice you've shared around growing, you know, being in that space of that sort of growth phase and building a team and designing processes and systems, and getting that all done isn't easy when you're in such hyper growth as well. So credit to you for accomplishing what you've done, and all the best for the next round of whatever's left of 2020 and onwards.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for taking the time. I mean, I think this is something that's missing actually in the account management, and I mean, that's how we started talking. There's not a lot of community in this area, specifically in this niche. So keep doing what you're doing, because I see you're one of the ones building it. So yeah, please keep doing that. Please keep doing that. It's really valuable.
Thank you. Wasn't that a fantastic conversation? So much insight and actionable advice on how to scale an account management team fast. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you missed part one, be sure to check it out. We talk about how the account management journey at Netguru began, how Calin approached building the account management team, how vital teamwork and collaboration is, and why and how he implemented account planning. So details are below, or just visit amtip.co/Calin1. Now don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and if you'd like to be my next guest on Account Management in Action, we'll get in touch. You can send an email to warwick@accountmanager.tips, or just DM me on the social media platform of your choice at Warwick A. Brown. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye heroes.